Okay, we are ready for this amazing dialogue. So I'd like to start first by introducing our moderator. And that is Laura. Laura, I don't have your last name on my notes, but yes, Laura Quiros. So Laura is an associate professor at Montclair State University, and she's author of Incorporating Diversity and Inclusion into Trauma-Informed Social Work. Laura began her work in the clinical arena and has transitioned to working with executive leadership. She helps connect leadership of corporate, nonprofit, and academic organizations to missions of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she works to foster inclusion by helping to increase awareness and move towards action. And that's what this whole series is about, is taking action. So we thank you for being here. Thank you for saying yes. And I will turn things over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and just to give you sort of the lay of the land, I am going to bring our panelists up, and then they will introduce themselves. The film is incredibly powerful, and I think it's incredibly relevant for this moment in time. There's a lot in there which I will refer to, and I have some questions that I came up with and questions that came from all of you. So why don't our guests come up and sit next to me, and I will pass the mic to you as we do introductions. So Bibi and Mac and Josh, although bios are very nice, I think sometimes they tend to take away the humanity of the person with all that stuff in there. So I decided that I would like for our guests and our stars, really, to introduce themselves before we start asking questions. So are you okay starting? Sure. Okay.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming, and peace be with all of you. I'm Bibi Bahrami, the president of a nonprofit organization, Awaken, that I work in Afghanistan. I'm also the president of Islamic Center of Muncie, and servant of my community, and blessed with 6 children. And thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you.
Peace be with all of you, no matter your stature in life or your climb up the social ladder. I am very thankful to be here tonight to share my story with you, Bibi and Josh. And one thing that take away from all of this is that I'm just a guy. Just a guy.
Hi, I'm Joshua Seftel. I'm a filmmaker. I live in Brooklyn, and this film, we made it a couple of years ago, and we've been on this amazing journey, the 3 of us, and some other people too, including Avi Bond, who's in the back and is a producer on the film. And we love sharing it with people and answering questions, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. So Josh, I want to start with you and Avi. I know you're back there, but feel free to chime in. And can you ground us in the origins of the story, how you found the story, how it came about, just to get us started here? That would be great.
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit with my past. I grew up Jewish in upstate New York in a small town, and I faced a lot of anti-Semitism growing up as a boy, and I sort of carried that with me through once I became a filmmaker, and it informed a lot of the stories I chose. So after 9/11, when I started to see my Muslim friends facing hatred, I was activated to want to do something, and I started making short films about American Muslims that I thought would help to shatter stereotypes and change the way that people were thinking and talking about Muslim Americans. And this story came out of that effort we came across a newspaper article about Mac, and we were able to find him and talk with him about this, and he wanted to share his story with us. And then we found Bibi and Saber, and we talked with them, and I was like, yes, I think this could be a good film. And then I asked them, so what did you do when you found out Mac was planning to kill you? And I remember on the phone, Bibi said, "Oh, well, we invited him over for dinner." And I said, "Okay, we have to make this film," and that was the origin.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm gonna move to you, Bibi, on that same theme. But before I do that, Josh, you mentioned your entry into this work was really grounded in your identity and your socialization. And I think a lot of times we forget about our intersecting identities and how much influence they have on who we are and how we show up. And I think sometimes that can be a very incredible thing, as in Bibi's case, right? Or as in Josh's case, like moving outside of our way of being in our identity. And sometimes it can be very constricting, like in Mac's case, right? The ways in which we've been socialized, the messages that we hear, and we just build on that, and we don't question it, and we do it. And it's not necessarily who we are, but it's how we've been socialized. And I just want us here tonight to be mindful of the ways we've all been socialized and the messages we've received growing up, not judging them, but just internalizing them and understanding how they impact who we are, what we do, and how we build or don't build relationships. And so, to me, that was a really powerful point of this film. And so, Bibi, I want to just start with you, and then I'm going to ask more general questions. But, we talk about kindness all the time, and I think that word is kind of underrated because I don't really know. I don't think people really know what that means, or at least have different, my definition of kindness may be different than yours. And so could you just talk about that innate kindness that, the first time I met you in the lobby downstairs, your energy was just like, I wanted to hug you, right? It's just coming from you. And so could you just share a little bit about, is that innate, is that messages you received? Is it religion? Just give us some insight into your own, really soul essence of kindness.
Thank you so much, Laura. That's a great question. I personally was blessed to be in a family with my parents who were always serving others in the village, and we even had place for homeless that I would always deliver food when I was a young girl. Growing up with that, and obviously the big part of that is my religion and serving others with kindness, and that's, salam means peace. I think that being said, religion plus the outbringing, and then married to my dear husband, who is a family medicine, who serves community, all walks of life, and all kinds of patients. You never even look if they have insurance or not, but just service to others. As I got married to them and coming from my parents. And then the beautiful community that I was part of, the Muncie community, we have so many caring individuals. I was really inspired. And that's how I started my nonprofit after 9/11, and helping in the community with better understanding. We always wanted to do that, but that was a wake-up call for all of us. We went through a difficult time, and we reached out to our community member and churches. I had many events and with the minister, with the churches, to welcome them with the Jewish community, the Hindu community, all walks of. And I started Interfaith for the last 15 years too, to get together and understand. To tell you about the religious part, as we look at this room full of beauty and colors and differences, God created us that way. He put us in different places on the earth, just to get to know each other and respect and understand each other, not to despise and judge each other. I think that is what I see the beauty in this film. I want to just share with you, when Josh reached out to me, just recovering from a health condition, I was like reborn, got a second life. And when he said that he would like to do this film, if I can help or share my story, I say, why do you want to do this? I say, who is this Jewish guy contacting me from New York, and young boy, I'm like, oh, he wants to do this. And after 9/11, I gave up on news and even watching movies. I said, what does he want to do? Then we talked about it, and he shared his heart that, there's so much, he has some Muslim friends, the Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, so much hate and judgment and misunderstanding, so much hate. This story will help. And it just felt like a talk from my heart. I said, why not? This is very dear to my heart, and my husband and I have been doing in our local little community, but this message could be shared with many of you, like today. Thank you all so much for inviting us to this beautiful place and for taking care of or sharing this message with others.
Thank you. So it was the modeling that you saw growing up. It was the messages that you were socialized with. And I also think you said something very beautiful, and I tell my social work students this, is that the work of belonging, right, and the work of dialogue and the work of justice is heart work. We spend so much time reading books, listening to podcasts, but do we live in our heart? And so I talk to my students about this, that we have to change hearts and minds, but hearts first. And so, one of the things that I was so impacted by was when Mac walked into the center, the mosque, and your husband said, "We have a visitor, we welcome him. That's just what we do." There was none of that distraction of social media or stereotypes or who is he, and he's, looks like this regnet. Yes, he said that, but he still welcomed him despite all of that other noise, right? So part of this for me is also, how do you move past the noise to get to that heart space and to that place of kindness? And so, Mac, I want to move to you for a minute, and I want to, if you could just sort of go back in that moment when Bibi and her husband hugged your legs, right? And in that moment, and what was that like for you? And if it's not that moment, this idea of transformation from going to such an extreme place of despair. I don't even want to say hate. I want to say despair, because what I get from you was despair and a lack of belonging, right? To a place of community in the mosque. What was that like for you? And then you came back, right? So could you share a little bit about that moment, and then what inspired you to come back to that place, in the place of love and in the place of acceptance?
That's a great question. Bibi didn't hug my leg. Without getting into the cultural thing, Bibi would not hug my leg. But her husband did. He did. And that was something that kind of sparked something. It was like, why is this guy hugging my leg? I'm nobody. And he doesn't even know what really is in my head right now. But before that, I was very welcomed. Absolutely, I was very welcomed. Everybody wanted to talk to me and asked me the who, what, when, wheres, and all of this, and because I went in there, I was kind of like undercover brother. I went in there and said, I just want to learn a little bit more about Islam, which wasn't necessarily a lie, but so the reason I was in there was because, as you saw in the film, my daughter had raised that question. So I went in there to get the evidence that I knew was there in my heart. And I went there to get it, and somebody handed me a Quran and said, read this. Come back when you have questions. And I was like, whoa, they've just handed me the Holy Grail to evil, and they're going to explain it to me. That's awesome. So I came back. I make the joke that it wasn't Ramadan, so I was there actually more often than some of the Muslims were. But unless you're Muslim, you probably wouldn't understand that. But it sparked that interest to learn that there's a different side. There's a different right. There's not only one right in the world. And that's what I ended up achieving at the end, was the understanding that there is more than just one right in the world.
I think there was another side to it. He shared with me that again, it goes back to that judgment. He came in, they knew that he was in trouble. My husband, when he came home, he said there was a concern, but in spite of that, he welcomed him. And knowing what he has shared with me, that he was giving that respect to him, like he was not given that before, like he was touched by that. In a doctor, who am I that even hugging me and comforting me? Is there anything I can do? I think that was the moment that you have shared with me. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That need to belong, right? That validation. I mean, I tell my students this, that people just don't join gangs or join establishments because they want to. They want to belong, right? So how are we moving outside of our comfort zones to create spaces of belonging and spaces of inclusion? I'd like to unpack the word humanity because it's said a lot, and I don't want to assume that we all think it means the same things. I'm very big on language because I think sometimes we say words and we think we share the same meaning, but in reality, we don't. So could you all just talk a little about what the word humanity means to you?
Well, we always describe this film as being about our shared humanity. So it's interesting that you bring that up because I don't know how much we actually unpacked that, but I'll tell you, to me, what I always was thinking about when I said that, and I probably said it like 1,000 times because we got interviewed a lot for this film by the press and did a lot of Q&As, and was just this idea that underneath, at the very heart of every person, we share some things in common, some fundamental things, like we want to be loved, we want to love, we want to care for others, we want to be taken care of, and that being kind to others, it feels good. It's like rewarding, and being treated kindly feels good. And so I think I'm like sort of talking about the golden rule in a way, but those are the things that I think I meant when I said shared humanity.
So, perception, I think, is a key in understanding basically everything. But it also tends to lean us to a different side, and it can also get us into a gray and a dark area. When we talk about humanity, at the surface, it means all of us. That's what it means. But when we talk about humanity and what we should be thinking about with humanity is the fact that it's how you see each other, how you feel about each other, how you're willing to act with each other. And one of the things I got to when I read the Quran, it says in there that God created us into different nations and tribes so that we may learn from one another. So somebody asked me one time what my pronouns were. I says, it's us and we. Because that's the only way humanity is going to take that next step.
Yeah, I think I'll just add a small thing to it that being said, I second what they said. I think we understanding each other and respecting each other, and all religions say neighbors, we're neighbors and we respect, and they say walk in my shoe. And when we make that statement, it has such a huge meaning. And a lot of time, we are very good of saying things, but I like to see it in actions, and that's what I believe in. If I see something and on my way out and that needs attention, I would immediately take action. And that is what makes us understand each other when you walk in my shoe, that you don't judge and you don't put some kind of stamp on certain group of people, because we're all humanity. We all want food and shelter and comfort for our children, for ourselves. That is what makes us all humanity. And God is the one who created all of us. I know my dear neighbors are here. They have come from Muncie, Indiana. I know they moved to their daughter, Nadia, and they came here to support me. They live in New Jersey here, and I'm very grateful for that, and all of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Laura,
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear your definition.
Well, that's funny. I was gonna offer it, but I want to offer it. Before I do that, or after I do that, I want you all to think about when I say to you, when you're operating from a place of humanity, what does that mean to you? I want you to go home and think about that. Like when you unpack the word humanity, what are your definitions and what comes up for you? So when I'm operating from a place of humanity, it's not about me. I'm not thinking of me. I'm thinking of all of you. I'm thinking of the ways in which I need to be vulnerable, the ways in which I need to be humble, the ways in which I need to operate outside of my own worldview, even if it's scary. Even those moments, my own background, I identify as a Black Latina who's also Jewish, grew up in homes of racism, anti-Semitism. Like, I know what it feels to be excluded. I know what hate feels like for myself, for my children, for my husband, my parents, intergenerational trauma, like all of us in some ways. But when I'm operating from a place of humanity, I am showing up even when it doesn't serve me, right? And so that's what it means to me. Mac and I talked about this over dinner, that I always tell my social work students with this. Social work's not about you. Like, it's not about you saving, and this is not your religion is not about you saving people. It's about coming to the table in a place of vulnerability, even when it's the most scary and the most uncomfortable. And I think we see from this film, from Avi to Josh to Mac to Bibi, that they all experience moments of discomfort, but they push past that in the space of humanity. And so that's my definition. And if anyone wants to share your definition of humanity right now, I'd welcome it. If not, you can think about it as a point of reflection, but it's just a good takeaway for tonight. So my next question, before I want to open it up to all of you, and I think this is one, people are really thinking about, or at least what I heard people are thinking about, and maybe, Mac, we start with you with this, or maybe not, but how do you move past that fear to that place of kindness, to that place of humanity? Like, how do we do that? I just said, like, that's what it means for me, but what are some tools that we can share to move past that fear, to move past that despair, to move past that, hate of self or of world from what you've been taught or socialized in?
Wow, that's the first time I've ever been asked that. So first, I think, is allowing the ignorance to fade away. We have to learn about what this thing is. And when we talk about things like perception and things being subjective, that's us. That has nothing to do with anybody else. That's us. So we have to educate ourselves. There's always two sides to the story. As Americans, we have gotten ourselves ingrained in living our lives in an echo chamber. All we hear are things that we already agree with. That's it. I didn't agree with Islam. I actually, my most used quote was, Islam is a cancer, and I'm going to be the surgeon to rid the world of it. That was my statement. It's because I didn't know. My perception of what Islam was the people that were shooting at me. That's Islam. No. Learn.
Oh my gosh, so now my Nora did an amazing job explaining it. It's hard to follow that act. But anyway, my personal, very simple approach is constantly in my local community. I made the decision, especially after 9/11, Muslim went through a lot, very difficult. I had beautiful 6 children brought up to this country. We came by choice to this country. I didn't want my children, grandchildren to be dealing with this, and that's why I tried to serve my community in any way I could, like to make a better understanding and write and speak in different places. That being said, when your family is involved, what you mentioned, your loved ones are involved, that's a humanity, you're affected. And then my son was sitting on the bus, say, "What are you doing here? Go back to," you saw my daughter-in-law come home, she was shaking. like, take your towel back to your country, what are you doing here? Many things happened. I think that was like a wake-up call for some of the Muslims to just kind of reach out in their community we chose to live here. Then our decision was to make my community as light in my ability and make an example to the whole world if I could with my little ability and try to serve what I know. I have very limited knowledge, limited ability. I'm a human. We're very weak humans. But I try to, at least I could cook. I invite people. I do fundraising for people, for the state representative, for others. And God has given me that ability that I can share meal with all humanity if I could. I would love for all of you to come and I wait on you and serve you. That is my strength, and I think Mac can tell you that, when before he came to my house, he was not as big, but it's my fault.
I weighed 190 pounds.
But I love to serve and I love to share and show my heart through that I love you and I care about you. And that's why I'm cooking for you and inviting you. That's my simple ways.
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
What I learned from this making this film was, I have this saying now, what would Bibi do? And I think about it a lot whenever I'm in a stressful situation. And like maybe one of the best metaphors for challenges in life is like being on an airplane, and when you're stressed out and you finally sit down and you're like, someone's kind of in your space and maybe they're taking the armrest or their coat is pushing into you or something, and like my first reaction to that is like I look over and I'm like, I hate that person. It's just where my mind goes. And then I'm like, okay, what would Bibi do? And I usually like just turn to them and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And usually, almost always, it ends up in a nice conversation, and all of those feelings of like frustration or even like hate in a way just instantly go away. And it's just been really liberating to take that approach, and I thank Bibi for that.
Thank you, Josh. He's very kind himself to see kindness in others. And I told him that, even your flight time gets so shorter when you're talking.
The only thing you did, the only thing you did say was just be careful because sometimes people talk too much.
So let's open it up to all of you. Do you have any questions for us or thoughts? Does it have to be a question? Yes, please. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead. You'll go next.
Thank you. Jan Phillips, New Jersey Council of Churches. My question to you, Mac, is personal. As I watch the film, right, I see you talk about a struggle with drugs. And so for me, drugs was stepping in and taking you away from understanding you. Then you go into the military, another way of letting somebody else take control of you rather than you understand what's going on for yourself. And then there's this gap that I don't quite understand about how did you then go to hate to such a degree that it's just unhealthy. I mean, right? Wanting to take somebody else's life is just unhealthy. So my personal question to you is, what type of therapy have you participated in? Are you participating in? And where do you see yourself going forward on that interpersonal reflection kind of journey?
Well, thank you. That's a beautiful question. We all have struggles, each and every one of us. I can't judge your struggle for being worse than mine, and you can't judge my struggle for being worse than yours, because that doesn't matter. It's ours. I've learned a lot over the years. The drugs were really just a phase. It was my teenage years, and then I went to into the military. Then I went to alcohol. Alcohol was the one that about did me in, okay? But when, so I didn't graduate high school. No diploma. But today I have 2 degrees.
Yes.
So you see, there is a process. There's a process for that step forward. Same thing with my own demons. There's a lot of them. I have a problem with forgiveness, as you saw in the film, right? Personal forgiveness, you know. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why or what causes me to feel that way. It's things that I did that I'm absolutely ashamed of. And it's not well, you had to do what you had to do. There's a point to where there's always more you can do, and that's a choice. We'll end up with that. But I still go through therapy, as I think everybody should go through therapy. I think everybody needs therapy. Like I like to say, we're all a little crazy. It's not a contest, okay? And the alcohol thing, I was talking to Laura about this at dinner. It's like I was drinking a half gallon of vodka every 2 days. I did that for 2 years straight, okay? I woke up one morning and said, you're done. Haven't had a drink since. Haven't had desire to have a drink since. There's alcohol in my house. My wife is Christian, and she drinks wine and stuff, right? And no desire to go crack one of those bottles open. None whatsoever. I wanted to quit, finally. I'd been to rehab and AA and all that other stuff. I wanted to quit. And I don't care what your problem is, what your addiction is. Until you really want to quit deep down inside, you will never quit. I don't care what rehab you go to, how much money you spend. You got to quit. Again, process and overcoming and becoming stronger.
I also want to contextualize this for a minute, and we talked about this at dinner too. So I started my work in the traditional substance abuse space. I'm a trained clinician, trauma work, along with social justice. But, you know, research tells us that 99.9% of the people who have substance abuse issues have histories of trauma, intense trauma, not just interpersonal trauma, but I'm talking about the traumas of racism and sexism and homophobia and classism, etc. And so I think, you know, when we talk about trauma, there's a normalization that has to happen because the society that we live in is not a healthy society. And in order to get away from the unhealthy society, we do things that we're often not proud of, but doesn't define who we are. It's a way to escape. And I would probably assume that everyone in here has wanted to escape for some reason at some point. The other piece that I think is really significant about your story and many other stories in here is the intense need to belong. When you live in a society that doesn't accept who you are, or you've been conditioned in social institutions that are historically oppressed, right, that have institutionalized you from the place of oppression, the military, for example, or growing up in a home that may not have been the most loving place of belonging. You seek outside sources to numb that pain and also to belong. And so I think, you know, what I've taught my students and learned the most about trauma is it's not really about the individual, it's about the society that we live in, it's about intergenerational trauma, and it's about institutional trauma and oppression. So just to contextualize Mac's story a little bit in the space of trauma and belonging, and the ways in which we have moved outside of ourselves and then found hope in different spaces as well. So thank you, and thank you for your question. I think we had another question back there.
Oh yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my question. So in the movie, you mentioned that these people non-believers wanted to kill you. So I'm wondering if there's a way to change those hearts. And then I also think it's very fascinating that your wife is Christian. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about, you know, is there true parity there? Like, do you really look at that person as like they're equal and the same things are going to happen to them in the afterlife? Or is there like some kind of like, oh, well, you know, you're a non-believer, so, you know, bad things you're not going to rise to the same level as, like, you know what I mean? Like, is there a real interfaith sort of equality, I guess? And can we get there somehow?
So, another great question. They have really good questions here tonight. So, with my wife being Christian, it was funny because I was looking for a Muslim wife and she was looking for a Christian husband. And we met. And as we got to talk and get to know each other, we got the same things on our mind. The same things that we want to achieve. Better people. We want a better people. She's a director for special education back home for the school system back there. She's working on her PhD now, inshallah, and, hopefully, because, I just got a bachelor's degree and an associate's degree, so I'm the dumb one. She's got many masters, and now she's going for a PhD, so whatever. So interfaith. I'm very, very big on interfaith. Because if there's a group of people in this world that is stronger than any other group of people, it's the believing people. It's the believing people. The believing people. We believe in a creator. We believe in something more powerful than ourselves that has final say-so. Believing people. Because you pray differently than me, or you read different books than me, makes you no less than me. And the minute I step up and say I'm better, I'm actually worse. And that's a problem that we have. And our religions, all the Abrahamic religions, we're all guilty of it. In some segment or another, it's all been done in the name of how we perceive faith, right? How we perceive God. Now, as far as changing mindsets, a large part of like my perception was, if they kill the infidel, guaranteed paradise, right? That was the perception. I will tell you, it does not say that in the Quran. I've read it a couple times. It doesn't say that. And I'll give you this example. I'll try to make this quick. I won't take everybody else's time. But I oversaw an interrogation in Afghanistan, mainly because I didn't trust the interrogator. He was a Marine who had converted to Islam because he married a local woman, okay? And he was real serious about this Islam stuff, right? Real serious. He had 2 Qurans with him, one in Pashtun and one in English, right? And he was trying to learn the language and learn the religion. He was serious. I didn't trust him, so I wanted to make sure. They had captured a would-be suicide bomber that was going to drive a truck full of explosives into the gate at Camp Leatherneck. Somebody eventually did, but it wasn't him. And we had him chained to the chair, and they're interrogating him. Through interpreters, he had spoke up and said, "If I kill the infidel, I am guaranteed paradise." So the Marine that was interrogating, being a Muslim, calmly just went over to his little flight bag there and got out his Pashtun Quran, slid it across the table, and said, "If you could tell me where it says that in that book, I'll let you go." And I'm like, "No, you won't." I don't care if it's in there or not. But he lowers his head, and this is the important part. He lowers his head in shame. He says, "I can't read. That's what the Imam told us." You see? Ignorance. That's why we are where we are right now.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, I don't know if it was Josh or who said it, that this is very timely. Even I know this was from a couple of years ago, that with social media, we are in an echo chamber. And so when all these algorithms and everything, they send back to you what you're looking for, and it doesn't open you to new perspectives. So I think is always compounded.
Totally. That's called confirmation bias. We're all looking for it. We're looking for affinity bias, which is surrounding ourselves with people who are most like us. And we're looking for confirmation bias, which is that we are constantly looking to confirm our beliefs. And if we're looking to confirm our beliefs, we're not, as you said, open to different worldviews and ways of being.
So how do we counteract that? Because if you're always told, oh, if you kill the infidels, you're guaranteed, or there's another one about guaranteed, 7 virgins.
70.
Yeah. So there are these sayings, and if that's all you hear, then that may be all you believe. So how do you break out of that, though?
So I'll start, and anyone else can chime in. But you have to be intentional about wanting to, right? Like, you have to want to. And if you don't want to, then you won't do it. I mean, my question to you is, like, you want to, okay, so who are the people you surround yourself with? Who are the books? What are the books you read? What are the podcasts you listen to? How are you engaging with people who are different than you? Or are you just doing that at work when you're assigned to, like, a DEI task and then you're going home to your own safe community, right? Like, you have to want to, and you have to want to be uncomfortable when you do that. And that's the big thing. It's like people are always asking me in my work to give them a handout on how to be more inclusive, how to be less biased. There's no handout. Like, you have to sit in those quiet moments of accountability and figure out how you are constantly surrounding yourselves. And it's worse since COVID, right? Because I think we sit together in the people that we're comfortable with. And I know there's fear attached to that, but if we actually want to live in an inclusive world, and what I say is that the work of social justice is not a mandate, it's an invitation. So you choose to take that invitation or you don't. And I think all of us have experienced real life fear and not living in that space of fear, but being able to move outside of that.
So and to jump off and catapult from what she said, it comes down to those algorithms and the internet, which the internet's a great source of information if you know how to use it properly, right? We, and I can only speak for Americans, we have allowed that internet and those algorithms to become our imam, to become our priest, to become our rabbi. They tell us what's going on. They tell us how to act. They tell us what to buy. They tell us this stuff. And until we're willing to take that information, gather it up, gather up some information over here, maybe read a book. They still have those, if anybody was wondering. They still have those actual books. Read a book. Then we might be able to alleviate all of that. And I use the reference of sheeple. There's no people in America. There's sheeple. Just follow around, going in a circle. So.
One of the I have the vantage point of sort of being more of a storyteller, and when we made this film, we thought a lot about, well, how can we present this story in a way that people will actually watch it and people will engage with it who might not ultimately agree with the story. And we thought a lot about, like, well, what do people like to watch, and like true crime and things like that. And so we intentionally designed the story as a true crime story, but it's a true crime story that ultimately doesn't have a crime in it. And so there was a bit of a Trojan horse approach to it, but what really interests my team is trying to make things that can be tools for people to share with others. So, like, we hope that, like, this film is on YouTube. So we hope that maybe you have a friend who needs to see this story, and you can say, hey, watch this, it's really cool, watch this film, and people have been doing that, and we have millions of views, but that's the idea. So like for us, our biggest victory in this whole process was when Joe Rogan talked about our film on his podcast, and he talked about Bibi, and he said, this woman is an American hero. And we were like, okay, this is a big deal. This is bigger than our getting nominated for the Academy Award, which we did get nominated. But that Joe Rogan thing was bigger because we knew that we were getting outside of the echo chamber and doing something that mattered.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of quickly add to that too. I mean, I know like a wise man have said, like, show me I forget, teach me I remember, involve me I understand. Once you are involved, I mean, just a really simple story of Mac, it took a long process. Like, when we were students together at Ball State, I saw him, I said, oh, you're a student, why don't you become the president of the MSA? He said, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, just become one. Getting him that respect and getting him involved, the leadership, come on the committee and serve others, standing up, because some of our community members were scared for a long time. Then standing outside and welcoming people and helping, holding their door in the cold. Is you show it by practical, we live it. Sometimes say Islam is the beautiful religion. Okay, we have to live it. You have to practicing, and Christianity is a beautiful religion, Judaism and others. I think we have to live it in our daily life, and that kindness comes out. And you have to involve people and make sure they understand.
Thank you. I think Donna, do we have time for one more question? One more? Okay. Yeah, one more question. Go ahead.
This is a little bit more about the kind of the content of the story. How did the FBI or the cops, whoever showed up, how did they know to come? I missed something, or did I miss something?
No. So what had happened is nobody really knew about this, right? And I was in college and being, I retired after 25 years and 5-time combat vet. And, so I had a different relationship with my professors than the 20-something students. Because 9 times out of 10, I actually had more life experience than the professors did, because most of their life had been in academia, right? Not of any fault. I'd much rather trade places. It's okay. But, watch out.
I have experience.
No, most, she understood what I meant. She understood what I meant. Oh my gosh. So, I don't know why, but for some reason I just started talking about this whole thing, the story. And I have no idea why, and I really don't.
You mean you started talking about the plan?
Yeah, well, this was after the fact, though. This is after the fact.
He was already a member of the mosque at this point. Yeah, he converted, yeah.
When they came, yes. So she stood there and she just sat there, and I'll never forget the look on her face. She was all dumbfounded, and she's like, wow, you need to tell that story. That could change people's lives. And I'm sitting there like, huh? I'm nobody special. And she says, what are you doing this afternoon? I said, well, I'm going to finish drinking this coffee and I'm going to go home. She goes, no, you got my next class. Tell your story. So there was somebody there who decided, wait a minute, this guy knows how to build a bomb and now he's a Muslim? Oh, no. We need to call somebody. Yes. And they come to the house and, like most men, back me up on this, we say things. As they leave our mouth, we just wish we could just grab. No. As soon as they came to the door, they introduced who they was, and I said, what took you so long? I was like, yeah, it was, everything was disposed of after they found out and everything, and I mean, I was, that's why I never ended up behind bars, because it was, they really didn't have much evidence. They did in the fact that I took them to where I had it stored, because they come to my house with a bomb dog and had the bomb dog go through the house. And I'm like, people keep these things in their house? The agent said, you'd be surprised. I'm like, whoa. I said, I'll take you where I had it, man. It's cool. And the dog hit a scent off of it. And it had been, so Anyway, that's.
And I think the FBI, they also came to our office, my husband's office, just to make sure the community was comfortable and they're with him coming there and everything is okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Any final words?
Thank you. You know, I just wanted, after watching the film, this question kind of went through my head. What was it like being president of the Muslim Association? What was that transition like in your life? What did that mean? And what did it mean leading that community?
So how I became president was, it was in the Constitution, the bylaws, and I was president of the MSA, Muslim Student Association. Therefore, by the bylaws, I was vice president of the mosque, okay, of the center. Well, our president, because he had an academic offer, he was a professor at Ball State, and he was going to another college. I couldn't think. So he was going to another university, and so he had to step down. I'm just left standing there like, oh, I said, Bibi, I don't know how to do this. And she's like, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll take care of it. So that's why when a lot of people will come up to me and ask me a question as president, I'd be like, that's a Bibi question. I have no idea. I don't know. You need to go find her.
It was in the bylaw, the vice president becomes president till we find another president. And that's why I said, don't worry, just step up till we find another president. I'll help you. And the same thing even in the beginning. And I always say, this is God's plan. Yeah. Here where he was and how this plan happened to him. It was his beautiful heart and his acceptance and whatever, that's not the word I can say. I can't remember now. That the opportunities was coming in front of him. And I think that's why he served the community.
Thank you. Let's give everyone a round of applause tonight. So we hope you left with more questions than answers, and sit in those moments of accountability, and wishing everybody peace and love. Thank you. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays to all of you.